USIBC's webinar on addressing challenges to supporting a global workforce in the post-COVID environment. I know that this has been an unpredictable year. Even the hurricanes are not behaving themselves. So I think it's an important time to have a discussion on how things are really going to change in the future. Um, uh, it's important to take stock of where we are because some of the instability and unpredictability that we've experienced, in fact, may become a way of life as we go forward. And when this first happened, there was a tremendous amount of fear, and there was a scrambling to continue business operations. And the experts we have here today really took the lead in taking care of their employees and ensuring that the continuity of their operations was sound and secure. As time has progressed, certain new structural needs have emerged, and the thinking has changed about the impact of this different working environment and working form has meant for the companies themselves. Whether it's Mahindra Tech or HCL or Lennar, these are companies who have very powerful reputations globally for being the top choices and places to work. They do so in part not because of just the output that they do, but of the way that they address the needs of their employees who produce that work and produce that result. And that's an important part of what makes them successful and the employees as productive as they are. The COVID environment and the actions that have taken place have meant changes in that. And both Mahindra and HCL and Lennar have had to adapt, and it will be important to understand what that has meant for them. Not just whether they shipped computers home, but how are they rethinking their organizations? And what are the needs that are now coming up in a future 2021 and beyond that is in fact going to be different. So I'm very pleased that you all have joined to hear from our experts. I'm going to introduce them to you in a second. Before that, I'd like to provide some housekeeping logistics. Please keep your microphones off and your videos off. Unless you wish to speak during the interactive portion. And there are ways to ask questions in the Teams profile. If you've joined us via the online mechanism, there is a chat function that you can submit a written question. And please do so at any time, and then we'll pick that up when we do the question and answer. But until then, please keep off your microphones. So it is with distinct pleasure and honor that I am able to introduce our experts. We're very pleased to have Dr. Purnima Prasad. She is the Global Head HR for Network Services at Tech Mahindra. And she also leads Americas as a region. So there is tremendous depth that she's going to bring to our discussion today. She's been an HR leader for 22 years, tremendously broad and progressive experiences, and has had incredible success in the global context. She is a psychologist with a PhD in organizational behavior and is focused on strategic planning, managing HR globally, compliance, crisis management, which is particularly important for us, HR operations, immigration and mobility, and then performance management. And I think a particularly important piece, learning and development, which we've all had to do in the COVID environment. Another important area that she works on is diversity and inclusion programs through her career. And I think that's going to be incredibly important because although we all show up to the same office, we are differently placed at home. And that different placement at home means that meeting those needs are going to be different. And she was awarded Change Agent of the Year by Tech Mahindra. Dr. Purnima Prasad, welcome. I'm really glad that you're here.
Thank you.
In addition, I'm actually very pleased to have Arthur Phillip join. He is clearly, in the conversations I've had with him, he's clearly a very deep thinker. He is an executive vice president of sales transformation and marketing. He oversees customer relationships, sales excellence, operations, and he initiates transformational activities within HCL. He leads marketing functions, all global business, strategic, sales enablement, and corporate communications to drive demand and growth and value for HCL. He delivers generation solutions and services in all of the IT areas, including cloud models, digital experience, advanced analytics, and IT security. He was previously with Microsoft, where he led worldwide sales and the GTM strategy for the services division. He has over 25 years in business and technology services and specializes in uniting people, processes, and business outcomes with enabling technologies to achieve success. I think that's wonderful. He's led global units and developed global solutions in operations and delivery. Arthur, thank you for joining us. I'm looking forward to your comments. And finally, we have Chris Marlin. And Chris is, for those of you who've met him before, he's a global thinker. He's a founder and president of Lennar International, which is a division of the largest and most innovative home builder in the US, Lennar. And if you may be wondering his role, it will become apparent. We're not just going to talk about high-level solutions today, high-level thinking. We're actually going to talk solutions and concrete examples. And Chris is going to help us do that. He serves as the global engagement arm, marketing, and that Lennar International does, selling Lennar homes to U.S. buyers throughout the world, as well as curating foreign direct investment into Lennar's portfolio of projects. Chris is a leading commentator on cross-border investments into the United States. He's a featured speaker at global forums and events, including the World Economic Forum, the Global Future Council on Cities, and the BOW Forum for Asia. I'm sorry, Chris, I don't think I said that right. But he is a featured expert on Bloomberg's Dayberg Asia, CNBC Squawk Box, and Singapore's Channel News Asia. He's also a director at the Atlantic Council, and he serves as a representative to many global forums. Chris, thank you all for joining us. I'd like to ask the three of you to provide us with some context and some remarks about your experience. Purnima, I'd like to ask you to go first and then turn it to Arthur and Chris. And then after that, Abhishek Kishore, who heads up our digital economy portfolio, will open up the question and answer. So everyone, thank you very much. Purnima, I'd like to turn it to you.
Thank you, Nilima, for having me on the panel today. And I also want to thank you and USIBC for all the wonderful work that you're doing during these trying times. As you may know, Mahindra & Mahindra is a group of companies, which is about $19.4 billion group of companies with more than 250,000 employees across the globe. We operate in about 100 plus countries and in 22 different sectors, right? We are in automotive, we are in farming, real estate, IT, and the diverse these sectors are, the diverse are the challenges going to be as well, right, during the COVID times. I am at Tech Mahindra, which is an information technology and consulting organization. We provide client service, which are sometimes 24/5 and sometimes 24/7. And with the COVID situation, this global delivery model, when the pandemic broke out, and there were strict lockdowns in all of the countries, we had to invoke our disaster recovery plan and the business continuity plan to keep the lights on. We asked ourselves a couple of questions on, how do we enable our associates to continue working from wherever they are? And how do we communicate to the last standing associate on what we are doing? And how do we remain transparent? Because that's very, very important. Given all the uncertainties that surround us, the least that we can do is give some surety and certainty in whatever that we can. And how do we provide support to our associates from a health and wellness perspective, right? But to address the first aspect of enabling our associates, you talked about shipping laptops and shipping desktops, and that's a given, right? However, supporting them in a way that will create as little discomfort to work from home was very, very important. In fact, we asked our associates to come or to take whatever that they want from the office, whether it is an ergonomic chair or an extra monitor or an ergonomic keyboard, whatever that they need to work from home with as little discomfort as possible. In fact, in India, we had to go through a huge logistics exercise where we home delivered all the equipment that they needed to pretty much thousands of associates. And of course, we had to set up a 24/7 technical help desk to troubleshoot any kind of issues that people would face, while connecting remotely. Because for many of them, it was for the first time that they were connecting remotely because they were so used to, they were regular office goers. Second part, in terms of how do we communicate to the last standing associate and ensure that we remain transparent, right? There was a study that was conducted by a nonprofit organization, and if I get the name right, Mindshare Partners. That study showed that employees who felt that their managers were not communicating enough or were not good at communicating, there was 23% more chances, more likelihood of them experiencing a decline in their mental health. So communication was absolutely key. We established a multi-step communication program where right from our president to every manager, which had a team that reported into them, communicated with their teams extensively on what we were doing, what were some of the measures that we were taking, and what are some of the measures that they have to take to remain safe. It also helped us listen ground up so that we become aware of some of the issues that they were facing and also provide quick resolutions to it. You talked about learning and development, you were absolutely right. During these COVID times, the HR and learning and development teams, had to overwork. We conducted a lot of training programs on how to handle a COVID outbreak. Or how do you react when your team member calls you and says he or she is tested positive, right? How do you manage those pandemic-related stress and anxiety? As I said, communication was absolutely key. We, in fact, sent out daily email buzz with motivational stories, information from CDC and other government guidelines, essentially, to keep them as much informed as possible. Then the third aspect that I talked about in terms of how do we provide support to our associates from a health and wellness perspective. The study that I mentioned earlier by that nonprofit organization, they also found out that mental health of about 42% of the respondents had declined since the pandemic broke out. So we have to pay extra attention on the mental health of our associates. We partnered with our insurance and EAP providers. We had to put up emergency COVID hotline as well as counseling hotline numbers for our associates to access. Within the first few weeks, we also worked with our insurance and got COVID testing included at free cost. We continue to have, and ever since the pandemic broke out, we continue to have meditation and mindfulness sessions for our associates to help in reducing anxiety and stress. We focused on not just the mental health of our associates, but also of the family, right? There were virtual sessions, summer camp, art sessions for the associate kids also. In fact, for the entire family, we had fitness from home sessions that were conducted where a physical trainer, conducted these sessions virtually. But what the beauty of all of these is that they were all employee driven. In fact, I was very, very overwhelmed with the way our associates volunteered to contribute to the larger good of the organization. We also went beyond the organization and looked at how we could contribute to the larger society. I mean, we all know that when schools moved to virtual, underprivileged kids with no access to gadgets, no access to internet, they would suffer the most. So we had an initiative here in the US where we had associates donate their spare laptops or Chromebooks, iPads, whatever that they can to the underprivileged kids. We also partnered with 9 food banks across the US, and we raised funds from our associates. In fact, we had senior leaders in each of these locations become the champions, right? And connect with the food banks and bring in that awareness in terms of what is this fight against hunger and how severe it is in our societies. It was almost like a competition amongst these locations in terms of who would raise the most. And I'm very happy to say that we enabled almost 300,000 nutritious meals to starving families and children. So in a nutshell, we looked at the health and well-being of our associates, of the organization, and in our own small way, contribute to the health and wellness of the society that we live in.
Wonderful. Arthur?
Yes, thank you, Nalima and Abhishek and Nishal. I come here today with gratitude as we really do cherish the relationship that we've had with the USIBC over the last number of years. Also want to thank my fellow panelists, Chris Marlin and Dr. Prasad. A quick background, I have responsibility for sales transformation and marketing at HCL, which is a $10 billion global technology company. We primarily operate in 3 major segments around the world. IT and business services. We're one of the world's largest providers of engineering and R&D services. And then we also have a very large segment of our business called products and platforms, which focuses on software and ecosystem partnerships around intellectual property. We were founded 44 years ago in India by one of the world's legendary entrepreneurs, Shiv Nadar. And since our inception, we've grown to over 49 countries, over 150,000 employees around the world. We are the fastest growing technology company over the last 5 years for all companies over $5 billion. And we're pretty excited about that because of the value we bring to the communities we live in. Here in the US, we have over 25,000 employees. We first came to the US 32 years ago, started in Silicon Valley, and today, have swept across the country. And we work with Fortune 500 companies in pretty much every major sector, Global 2000 companies. And, we really, for us, one of our significant traits is the deep bond and long-term relationships we establish with our clients in helping them not only take care of their needs of today, but really with an eye towards innovation and figuring out what are the next 1, 2, 5, 10 years look like in their own business that we can apply technology to and innovate with. There's no doubt this last number of months have been very interesting for all of us. You have, first of all, a pandemic. And if you think about this pandemic, we all have grandparents that, used to talk about some major event in their life, World War II. This will be that event, I think, in all of our lives that we will tell our grandchildren about. It's that historic and epic. You pack onto that economic challenges, social change movements in all across the world, and of course here in the US, geopolitical conflicts, and it is, something for the ages. And for us, it's really interesting how it has impacted our business. We have always had a very, with 150,000 people, it has still been a very flat network, people-centric, trust-driven organization. And I would tell you that we have tripled down on that during this period of time. The human relationship side and the humanness of our organization, to me, has been one of the things that really has shined through. Really proud proud. It's hard to be proud. You want to be humble during a period of time like this, but of our CEO and our leadership team and our company, early on we came back from the World Economic Forum in the middle of January, and literally the next day, we started meeting before people were even talking about COVID on a global basis. We saw what was happening with our business in China, and we saw local offices starting to have illness and shutdowns. And so we gathered everybody together from a leadership perspective and started monitoring this in a full crisis 24/7 mode. And I think, the thing that to me had a huge impact was we broke it down into 3 very simple categories: employees first, our clients, and our communities. And everything we looked at was from those lenses, not from revenue and profit metrics that you usually monitor a business. We made some pledges very early on. There would be no job impacts whatsoever because of this pandemic. We wanted people to have a peace of mind. We went into high gear with all types of employee programs, from physical to mental to spiritual, even to making sure people's families and that situations were safe in their own communities. And I think that really, that was a lot of work above and beyond sometimes what we're used to in running a technology business around the world at such scale. And, that had I think a major impact in helping us understand what was going on by country, by state, by territory, because there isn't a peanut butter approach to handling a situation like this. And clearly going forward, people will have to look at things granularly in terms of how they manage their business. We made sure our clients were okay. Just in the first few days, we had millions of end users of our customers stood up and working securely and having the right infrastructure. But, those are table stakes. Right now, it's actually looking at the shock that digitalization has caused and figuring out how we can help companies. In some industries, they have to stay, they have to survive. In other industries, business is booming like never before. And we have to help them really kind of define, not only stay ahead of the pack, but now define what the pack means. And that's been an awesome honor. In communities, our company has always, we have a massive foundation. From India to Europe to the US to the rest of Asia, we have one of the world's largest foundations in terms of looking at all of the United Nations sustainability issues, as well as diversity and inclusion, and really a focus on helping people that don't have the privilege that we do. We've always given millions of hours and millions of hours of effort every year to those causes, but this is a period of time where every single individual rolled up their sleeves, looked around where their own homes were, particularly here in the US, and said, what can I do to help my neighbors out? I'm working from home now. The world is a two-dimensional environment. I can't go out and hug people and actually shake hands, but how can I make a difference? And we've set up platforms to really help people, not just monetarily, but actually put action into work. Just touch on 3 quick outcomes that I see as we go into the future. The first is digitalization has occurred at such warp speed that one of the big things, whether you're a small, mid-size, or large business or a government, that you're going to have to think about is really establishing a strong foundation, a strong digital workplace, and really re-engineering digital processes in general, because what fit in a largely non-digital world is going to have to really, the work that would have taken the next decade is now being truncated into 1 to 2 years at max. And with that, the whole interaction between customers and their businesses and governments and stakeholders is going to be dramatically different than it was before. Hard to imagine that we're all going to be attending 1,000-person conferences anytime in the next few months or even years. Ecosystems of trust is the second area. I think no company can do things alone. I mean, the reason we're all together today on this call is we're an ecosystem, right? We all have common interests, particularly in the area of the US-India business relationship. And so the continued development of ecosystems and connectivity and the trust between entities is going to be critical. The final thing I'm going to say, I think the biggest lesson for us is, everybody talks about resilience and authenticity, but the humanness, right? Step back for a second. We've all grown up. You have your personal life and you have your business life, and there's two different identities. And this period of time has brought those two identities together. You can no longer just show up at work with the corporate facade and the conservative approach and the, play it safe. And, I think in general, that's how businesses work around the world and how workers have worked around the world and in government as well. But the reality is we all have things going on in our lives with this pandemic. Children at home, parents at risk. You can't go out and have your normal relationships. And, as Dr. Prasad mentioned, mental health can be an issue. Well, that factors into everybody in every situation. So what I've seen is the humanness of this situation has, I think, forever changed how corporate entities and businesses and governments are going to work. There's no more facade. It's time to get real and authentic and address those things. And listen, the last thing I want to say in my time here is that I stress that strategically, no matter what size business or entity you come from today, we all have a significant role to play in helping the USIBC. I am a personal believer that, of course, I represent a global corporation that is headquartered in India, and I was born and raised in the U.S., but I believe that the United States-Indian relationship is the most fundamental strategic alignment for the next decade and the next century. You look at it every angle, technologically, government, investment, R&D, infrastructure, military, population, education, and on and on. It is the fundamental relationship. And really, both countries are fabrics of each other's society. So thank you for all, being here today and doing this work.
Arthur, thank you. Thank you so much. As everyone can see, HCL is an incredibly important partner for USIBC. And we're tremendously grateful for the support you give us. But with that, I'd like to ask Chris to share his thoughts.
Sure, thanks. And that was great. So, of course, thank you, USIBC and the Chamber, and Dr. Prasad and Arthur as well. In a nod to Arthur's talk, I am going to get rid of my corporate facade here, and I'm going to let some people join us in this talk. These people are over my shoulder. They are Metallica. Arthur, I love that. And so I think you're absolutely right. This blending of the personal and the professional is one of the blessings of this situation, this historic situation that we've all been through with very few blessings in it, and what a tragic situation that we're all in. But these are inspiring talks from Dr. Prasad and from Arthur, and I'm reflecting on them in real time, and they've caught me a little off guard only in the sincerity of both of them. I thought it was just remarkable. So thank you. And Arthur, I'm also going to pick up on in terms of the reflections of what was going on at the beginning of this pandemic. We didn't see one another in Davos, but I was there as well. And whereas you returned to your business and immediately started planning, I returned to Miami that evening of, I think it was January 21, a Saturday evening. And I went to the emergency room the very next morning, and I slept for the next 10 days. First of all, I had not been to the emergency room in about 22 years, we figured out. So it had been a long time since I'd been that ill. And then I slept for about 10 days after that. So there was no planning on my part. And Lennar's business, other than Lennar International, which is the business we run, Lennar's business is completely within the boundaries of the United States. We build homes and deliver them to homeowners here in the United States. So it wasn't until my first return to work, which was around February 1, that our team started, Arthur, what you guys started, and probably 2 weeks earlier, and that was how this pandemic, which was then not declared a pandemic, was beginning to affect our businesses around the world through Lennar International, with Lennar Corporation, our home builder here in the United States, not yet experiencing anything at that point. So when you said that, I was reflecting on those moments in Davos where, and before the people who joined this call were on, you were sharing about your New Year's experiences in London, where we were all in Davos, and it was, there were thousands of people there, right? And there was this celebration of hope, planning for the future. There were all kinds of things that we were discussing there that were quickly, unfortunately, shelved. And the World Economic Forum has now dubbed 2021 the Great Reset. And we'll see how those conversations evolve as we reflect on what this pandemic will mean to us as a society, as a civilization, as a planet moving forward. Just like HCL and just like Tech Mahindra, we focused on our associates' safety first. The greater Lennar family suffered one of the very first COVID deaths in the United States. I think it was the 6th death, was a Lennar associate in Seattle, Washington. Mm-hmm. And that immediately kicked off a series of events with respect to how Lennar started managing the crisis. First, a focus on the community of Seattle, and certainly the community associated with that associate's family and that particular division of Lennar. Second, really understanding what we were trying to understand what we were about to experience as a company. We immediately hired a chief medical officer for the first time in the history of our company, and we have far fewer associates than the other two companies that have presented. We only have about 10,000 associates in the United States, all in the United States, with very few associates outside the United States, and that experience of having to deal with this immediate impact, which was the death of one of our associates, the immediate impact on his family and that particular community, which at the time was the tip of the spear in the United States with respect to what was happening from a public health standpoint, really brought all of this home in a very real sense to us immediately. So it was an associate safety first program that then immediately translated to our homeowners and our prospective homeowners. And as these shutdowns were occurring throughout the United States, we were getting desperate pleas from prospective homeowners who were saying to us, you've got to finish our home. We have to get into this home. We've got to get out of wherever it is that they were, or perhaps they were in transition for a new job, or whatever the thing was that was happening in their lives. And that resulted in a series of engagements with governmental officials around the United States so that we could keep building the homes that we build in the ordinary course as an essential service for people who needed somewhere to go. I mean, if you think about it, the plans had been made, people were in transit, there was a tremendous amount of fear and nervousness that they weren't going to have a safe, healthy environment to undergo what was going to be these severe disruptions and lockdowns. So that was sort of our very early scenario as we were going into this pandemic. And then immediately, and I think this is important for the audience that we have here today, immediately we kicked off daily leadership calls all the way down, and I call them leadership calls because it started with the leaders of the company, but the daily calls started to occur throughout the company at every level, including every worker. And so that daily communication, which at the first was really disruptive, and Arthur, you want to talk about blending professional and personal, there were so many calls happening for months that you really got to know everyone in a very different way, in a good way. And so those calls have peeled back a bit, but we felt that over communication was the best way to get through the initial stages of what we were dealing with as a company. And we are one of those organizations that Arthur mentioned that through the pandemic has had more demand for its products and services. But these are some of the sort of crisis management tools that we immediately expressed, initiated a focus on health and wellness, which has been discussed earlier on this call, and of course, really had an awakening, I think, as a company with respect to social justice issues of inclusion, equity, and diversity. So those things, those conversations have been happening with our company throughout what was the American summer. And as we move now into the fall and reflect on this, and I'll keep these comments very brief, as we move into the fall and reflect on this, I think what we're all experiencing in one way or another is the confluence of technology accelerated change, which some people refer to as digitalization, but it's technology accelerated change, pandemic related change, social justice related change globally, and importantly, climate change.
Yeah.
So all of these things are happening and swirling about us at once. And as my good friend in Singapore told me Sunday morning when we were catching up on some things, you can't pick your crisis. The crisis picks you.
Absolutely.
And right now we have at least 4 crises in some fair measure converging on us all at once. It's a lot to take in, but as we've shown, I think, and thankfully through organizations like USIBC, we're all capable of pulling together and getting through it together. So thanks for having us today, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Prasad, Arthur, and Chris. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Abhishek Kishore to take us through some questions and discussions. And Abhishek will share how the participants can ask questions as well.
Thank you, Neelima, and thank you, Dr. Prasad, Chris, and Arthur. Those initial remarks have given us a lot of food for thought. As we move right now during the pandemic, as well as when we go and think about beyond the pandemic as to what we need to do. So just a fair bit of housekeeping here. We will start the moderated discussion session here, but for the attendees who have any questions, please use the Microsoft Teams functionality which you have, through which you have joined, and type in your question in the chat box, and we will be sure to take those questions up from there. All right. Okay. All right. So again, as I said, all 3 of the speakers, I mean, it has been a very, very enlightening initial session for us. I will start with just one snippet, which is according to one of the reports by International Labour Organization, which just came out very recently. More than 4 out of 5 people, that is 81%, in the global workforce of 3.3 billion people, are currently affected by full or partial workplace closures. That is around 2.5 billion people worldwide have been affected by this pandemic. And as Arthur, you were saying, this is going to be one of those things which we talk about to our kids and our grandchildren. What was that big thing, black swan moment, which happened during our lifetimes? So this is our black swan moment. We see the world change in multiple ways post-pandemic. The social mores will change based on our experiences from during this pandemic, such as Dr. Prasad and Arthur, you were saying, work from home and remote learning. And then as Chris was saying, that confluence of technology accelerated change. We were anyways thinking of, we knew that technology was anyways helping us move as a society towards automation and blurring the boundaries between physical and virtual. But it has now been expedited in an exponential manner. Now, as we come out of the pandemic, there are so many big questions which, as a society, we need to think about. So, to our esteemed guests here, the first question which I would like to point forward is because all of you are leading a part of billion-dollar global organizations, and you have globally diverse workforce. What does this mean for your business model? What does this mean for an organization which is a global organization with globally diverse workforce? What has your systemic thinking inside your organization changed, and how do you change it? How do you look at what has changed as to how you interact with your clients? So I'll start with Dr. Prasad, and then I'll move to Arthur.
Sure, that's quite an interesting question, Abhishek. In the IT industry, and I can't talk about the construction business, but in the IT industry, there were some rigid thoughts to begin with, right? In terms of what kind of work can be done from office and what can be done from home. Those rigid thoughts are now busted, right? We've now moved to almost 98, 99% of our organization working from home. Now, it just doesn't matter whether you are working from a home in Dallas or working from a home in Pune or from Quito, Ecuador, wherever you are. Now, those rigid thoughts are now completely gone. Now, what that does is it's not just a global workforce, it's become a global virtual workforce, right? In the past, or just a couple of months ago, there was this relationship currency that people could use, right? Who you know, what you do. That relationship currency is now taking a back seat. It is no longer dependent on who you know or where you are. Are you closer to the headquarters? Where do you work from? It doesn't matter anymore. I think now what takes importance is the skill currency. It's more important to know what you know and what you can do, right? That's become more important. That also leads us to what I call as the gig economy, right? For the uninitiated, a gig worker is somebody who is not attached to any organization, who only focuses, who picks up packets or who picks up projects, works on that project based on his or her skill set and moves on. What we have done within Tech Mahindra is we have created that kind of a gig platform within the organization where people are no longer aligned, or they don't have to be aligned to a particular project for a long period of time. They can take their interesting work packets, work on that, and move on to the next project. So that's the kind of new age delivery format that we are transforming ourselves into.
Interesting, and I'll just follow on and say this. If I think about this overall environment, work from home and the whole structure of that has been, that's been around for 20, 30 years and probably, before our careers, right? And it's kind of gone in ebbs and flows and different waves in the technology industry. For me personally, I've always said to my employees, unless you need to be with a client every day, either in delivery or specifically in a sales or client partner role, as long as you have a laptop and a cell phone and a good connection, you can be on the beaches of Goa, wherever you choose to be, right? As long as you can get your work done. Now, you're right, the relationship equity is critical. There's no doubt, and we've always been a company, we have massive centers. We have hundreds of centers and offices around the world. We're going to rethink our real estate strategy. Here's one of the great things, Chris and Lennar, the huge partner to HCL, have helped so many of our employees, especially people relocating within the U.S. or people coming to the U.S. for the first time. tremendous partner. And Chris, we're probably going to have to like get new special home office separate facilities.
We've got you. We have.
Perfect. And you know, so I think we're starting to figure that out. Where is it going to make most sense for people? And even right now, we have some cases where people have to go into an office. You know, engineers have to touch circuits when they're developing them, and they have to actually put things together, and they can't do that in a clean environment at home. They have to get into labs. You know, certain projects require a few people to meet together to solve a real-time problem on a whiteboard or, you know, with materials. So we're having to do that. We have everything socially distanced, but the reality is we're going to have a hybrid environment, and I think all businesses will going forward. I mean, the wear and tear of going from point A to point B. You know, I traveled over 1 million miles last year, and I've averaged in a little bit under that the last 15, 20 years. I like to say I'm really 29. I just look this way from all the radiation of the planes. But I think we're going to rethink a lot of these items and make it more flexible to the individual.
Yeah, I think it's not. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, just to tag on to what Arthur said, totally agree with you, Arthur, certainly about business travel, the way businesses are going to be running, the hybrid nature of home and office. And at Lennar, coming out of the global financial crisis, we developed a product called the Next Gen Home, which was then designed to enable older people to live with their children or children to live with their parents in a manner that was non-disruptive to that home environment. We've retooled that as part of our approach to the pandemic, and we're now calling a product line the Next Gen Office, which is exactly what you said, Arthur. It is an enabler of the home office environment in a manner that has previously not been presented. So you're going to see all those kinds of innovations and more, certainly with respect to real estate. But I think one of the things that you touched on importantly, and certainly Dr. Prasad did, is this notion of social relational capital that we have with one another, and finding ways to preserve and promote that, particularly for new entrants to the workplace, and helping those new entrants to the work environment really socialize themselves. That is a massive challenge for all of us, I think.
Yeah.
I must say, Chris, that I particularly like all the floor plans of your Next Gen Home. I have seen them myself, and they're very, very innovative. And I'm sure you were one of the pioneers in that, because I've not seen that with any other builder.
We thank you so much. We are, I will say, we are a pioneer. It is intellectual property.
Thank you so much.
There is somebody who's got a microphone on. Can you please? I think it's Ananda Ahuja. If you could, please.
Perfect.
Mute yourself. Thank you. Now that we're talking about homes, I'm sorry, Abhishek. I'm gonna squeeze in and ask a question.
Yeah.
Arthur, you mentioned a partnership with Lennar and these homes. Could you talk a little bit about what that is and sort of what you're hoping to achieve with it and how what it does?
Well, the key thing is just take the U.S. 25,000 people. There is a larger than average percentage of our population that is mobile for all kinds of reasons. Somebody gets a promotion, somebody changes engagements. A lot of people will work with a company for several years or beyond, but they may have gotten to the 5th year of working with a major oil company in Texas, and now they're asked to go work with a drug company in New Jersey for the next 4 or 5 years. And so that kind of mobility, what we found is we just can't have our people worrying about these things. And Lennar's a great partner in that they've got homes all over the country. They're modern, they're sophisticated. And so they've really kind of helped us tailor a way to help our employees have a peace of mind and take care of all those. For so many people, it's, buying a home and building a family is a first time thing or a second time thing. We all forget how major of a experience that is in itself. I mean, it's both the most enjoyable experience in the world, but it is stressful beyond belief. So I tell a lot of my employees, get to know, program the route to Home Depot in. You're going to need to know that whether you can pick up a tool or not. But Lennar has been fantastic at helping us really soup to nuts, help our employees take the peace of mind out and get their families set up properly.
Thanks for that. And we treat your employees just as we would treat any VIP. We feel it's a very special relationship, and we're grateful for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Back to you, Abhishek.
Chris, a follow-up question to that. I understand that you are getting some requests from people about having a home which is also built like an office because of the pandemic, which we have been working from home for a long now, and it sounds like a long time, looks like a long time. It's only been 6-7 months. But what are the other trends which you are looking at? Because it's not just the work, there has been a lot of change in how we work. We are working from home. We are doing a lot of online stuff. But there has been a lot of other social changes as well, which have happened, which Arthur elaborated, Dr. Prasad elaborated, and you also touched upon. What other trends are you looking at in terms of how people live? Because you have so many real estate all across America, thousands of homes. You are the largest home builder in America. What are the other trends which you are looking at when you talk to people and your clients?
Well, thanks for that question. So there's a mega trend that is playing out in the United States right now, which is this the notion of some deurbanization, right? People moving from highly densified environments and really seeking out that safe and well place for their families where they can live and work. But directly to your question, I think what we're seeing is that the home is becoming the hub of your life. So it's not only where you work, it's where you go to school, it's where your family socializes, it's how your neighbors interact with you. It is, and these music figures over my shoulder here, you learn what your neighbors like because you're hearing a lot more music around the neighborhood. So I think it's a really good question because it's demonstrative of what people are doing. And I think it actually goes directly to what Arthur was saying in his opening remarks. It is this removal of these facades and layers of our lives where we had compartmentalization before, and now we have a true self, and everyone is seeing the true self, and you're interacting on those terms. And so the home is the hub of your life. It was that before, but now it is even more pronounced than we ever could have imagined, right? Like Arthur, I was on airplanes a lot before this. I'm grateful I'm no longer on airplanes. And it's understanding, those kinds of things for which you can express gratitude that helps you also understand what you need in, around, and throughout your home and your neighborhoods. And so there are a lot of trends that are happening out there. I think there's no question that we all, and this is a global issue, not an American issue, it is a global issue, that we have to be reflective on these notions of social justice. We have to be reflective on these notions of equity. We have to understand how to lift everyone up. And I think that all of us are going to come out of this with more thoughts in those areas.
Thank you. Thank you. I know we are closing in on time, so let me just engage you on a couple more questions. So we have, as a society, moved towards more of digitalization. A lot of you mentioned work from home is always, again, it's guided through internet and laptops and everything. But as we move towards adoption of a lot of technology, there has been a real concern that some people are saying that humanity and technology are in conflict. And considering what we have achieved right now, do you think, is it possible to reconcile or resolve the seeming paradox of finding ways to remain distinctly human in a technology-driven world? Arthur, to you.
Yeah, look, this is the biggest central theme that I spend my time in and around, including, the last 2 years at the World Economic Forum. The short answer is that there is conflict, but, it can be resolved. Technology and humans have to coexist. And it's a new relationship that'll define over the next, 10, 20 years. Artificial intelligence is one of the areas that we're all going to have to engage deeply on and understand. Because today, when you hear about job loss or industries and businesses changing and clean energy and a lot of other things that are taking place, artificial intelligence is one of those core underpinning components of technology that's creating conflict. So a lot of hope. We should have another panel on this one because it's a huge topic.
Okay.
Dr. I think we're going to need, Dr. Prasad's psychology degree on this one because, right? I mean, Dr. Prasad, I think your background is perfectly suited to address this issue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I agree completely with Arthur as well that, especially in the IT world, we say that it is COVID-19, which has actually played the real role of chief digital officer, right, Arthur?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so there are a lot of these companies who are probably slow or hesitant towards moving into a digital platform, but now they are forced to, right? I mean, a lot of organizations have had to press their reset button. So until unless they adapt to newer ways of working, newer ways of operating, it's going to be very, very difficult for businesses to survive.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. There was one question in chat, and I think Chris, you have already answered that question about Lennar's plans to enter India. I know some of our speakers have to leave because they have a hard stop at 11, and they're doing other webinars post this. So I'll hand it over to Nilima for closing comments so that we can just finish off and go from there. You're on mute, Nilima.
I try and keep the background noise to quiet, and then I end up not being able to. But there is another question, and for those of who can stay, we'd happy to continue it. And it is that the training plans that your companies have as you go forward and how that's working. And even with respect to Lennar, but I do know that some of you have to drop, so I am going to thank you all for taking the time to join what's been a very insightful and reflective discussion. And for those of you, when I mentioned in the beginning, I said, well, where, why is, or what's the role that Lennar has in this conversation? Now it must be clear that organizations, before we used to go to work, now the home is an integral part of that. And Lennar's approach and philosophy to home building and the way that it works with companies such as HCL and other big globally diverse companies is really important in helping the employees make the most of the situation that they have. So you understand why we put this particular nut together in this way. And so I want to thank Dr. Prasad, Arthur, and Chris for all of you for joining. And I want to thank our guests as well. But with those words, I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Prasad to share with us the organizational and psychological thinking that goes behind this. Because now I think we have a context with Chris's comments, with Arthur's, he reminds me, frankly, Arthur, of, the monk who sold his Ferrari. The one who sees the world and then has lessons to teach us all. So Dr. Prasad, your thoughts on this integration of this new world as we bring it into our homes in a different way, and Lennar is building those homes and developing that to meet those needs, what you see as happening. So please do proceed.
Yeah.
Just before, Arthur, I know you need to drop. So if you need to drop off, you can drop off and we can continue.
Please, Arthur.
Yeah.
I thank all of you, and I look forward to one day meeting you in person and Thank you. I've learned a lot from each of you. Look forward to staying in touch, team.
Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you, Arthur. Thank you. Yeah, so Neelima, I mean, I want to go back to what Chris was mentioning, right? You know, earlier, probably there were, we had compartmentalized our lives. There was a work life and there was a home life or a personal life. Now with both of them, you know, coming together, there's a fluidity in the way we operate, right? There's no more that compartmentalization where I, you know, work and I only focus on work when I am at work, and then now I'm at home and then I can, you know, tend to my family. In fact, I'll give you my own example, right? I have an elementary school goer kid, and my daughter has her virtual classes happening on the other room. And there's a lot of this fluidity, and you know, when I might be on a call and she may encounter a technical issue where she's unable to log on to her Zoom class, and I need to excuse myself and go and help her out. And you know, those are the kind of that's the kind of reality that we are living in. So it's very, very important, first, to accept that this is real, right? Acceptance of the work life and the personal life coming together. It's no more work-life balance. It's more of work-life integration that we are talking about. The moment you accept that this is going to happen and you don't hold yourself to very high standards that, okay, when I am at work, I will not entertain anything that's happening, you know, outside of this room. The moment you accept that reality, I think half of your battle is won, right? The moment you accept, then you learn how to adapt to, because each one of us, our home setups are very different. Our personal requirements are very different. Somebody might have a school going kid, somebody might have an elderly parent to take care of, or somebody might have to tend to their pets, right? I mean, the requirements, the needs are very, very different. So first is to accept that now life is no longer the same the way it used to be. Second is to adapt. And there is no one size fits all solution that we can have for all of us. We need to reflect on, you know, what works the best for us. There are some things that works the best for me, but that may not work the same for my team members, right? So what I would suggest in a nutshell is accept, adapt, and come up with your own solutions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I know we are well over time. Chris, thank you so very much for taking the time to join us.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
It's been an important and interesting discussion. It's been personally fascinating for me. I think others share that feeling. Dr. Prasad, I think between you, Arthur, and Chris, we could listen to you all day. We'd like to invite you back at another time as things have progressed to share with us again how some of the things that you've talked about have been implemented. We typically do get questions afterward. I'll share those with you. Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Prasad, could you please speak to the training plans that you have, as well as Chris, if you've got training plans for your employees? This is somebody who really does wish an answer, and so I understand people may have to leave, but if you just take 2 minutes, that would be helpful.
Sure. Chris, do you want to go first?
Oh no, I'm dying to hear what you're going to say. Actually,
okay.
You guys are you're at the leading edge of this, so
yeah.
I'm looking forward to your response.
Yeah. So training plans. I mean, you know that IT organizations invest a lot in training, right? You know, training, reskilling, upskilling, all of these are part of our, you know, DNA. We ought to. But during this pandemic, we had to take a relook at, you know, our training plans, because I come from the learning and development background. That's how I started my career. I started my career teaching in the university, and the face-to-face teaching is what we all, you know, L&D people consider as the best form of training. And now that's no longer a possibility. We had to reflect on what we could do in terms of, you know, our learning and development processes. What we did was we created a platform called as Upskilling as a Service. Now, what this means is that our associates can have on-demand, personalized training modules that they can use on a self-service mode. They can use it as and when that is required, right? And it's not just a learning platform. It also provides them assignments, real-time projects that they can work on, practice environments. That's what we did. Now, it was just not restricted to technical aspect. We had to train people on the behavioral aspect. Again, behavioral aspect because you're working as a loner sitting at a home, and how do you actually interact with your colleagues on a virtual mode. We had to conduct a lot of sessions, again, as I mentioned earlier, from mindfulness and meditation, those mental health related aspects. And a lot of our associates were not used to working from home at all. So a lot of work from home 101 sessions we had to focus on. So it was an all-rounded approach, technical, behavioral, and to some aspects from a personal improvement perspective.
Thank you. Chris, do you want to speak to how you're reworking your folks?
Yeah, so I'll keep it very, very brief, but we are struggling in this area. I'm being very open, honest, and transparent. So in terms of training, we're a home builder. Home builders were not known before the pandemic as being good at this. We are trying to figure this out in real time. So that's why I was very focused on Dr. Prasad's comments, and upskilling as a service really struck me as precisely the kind of approach that a large employer, a small employer, a medium-sized employer should be taking vis-a-vis its associates. That is, again, coming together and helping us all figure out the meaningful path forward that works for ourselves, our employers, our companies, our businesses, the things that we do together. This is critical. And so I'm reflecting on upskilling as a service, and I love that if more employers, more businesses undertook that kind of mindset, because it is a service. It is a true service. It is a true service to the person who is receiving the upskilling. So I think if we can incorporate that mindset into what we're doing at Lennar, we will have made some good headway.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you look at it, whatever are the current skill sets, they're going to become redundant very soon, because the way we operate, it's changing by the minute, right? As long as, our associates aim to stay relevant and keep themselves, upskilled, ready for, fit for the future, have those skills ready for the future, it's going to be very difficult to survive in this industry.
I know we're going to stop soon. The only thing I would say is, Chris, the notion that purchasing a home will always be a psychological decision, and the psychology around it changes because the circumstances change. So I think for you, it would be good in a future date to hear how, even though you're thinking through it now, how you've ultimately adapted to training your folks to meet a new world, whether home buying has changed. And I'm not talking about just I need one office and I need another mini office. I'm talking about the psychology of home purchasing that you see as, Dr. Prasad and HCL's, the partnerships that you have as they evolve.
We would love that opportunity. And of course, if anybody wants to get to us, they can find us through the chamber, but and USIBC. To your point, it is about frictionless scenarios. I mean, that is the psychology that we are focused on as a matter of home buying psychology, producing really frictionless scenarios that enable you to go through this process in a manner that has never happened before. I mean, let's be honest. If Thomas Jefferson, one of the founders of the American Democratic Republic, were to come to life tomorrow, he would know precisely how to buy a home in the United States, because it hasn't changed since he was around. So what we're trying to do is remove those frictions from the entire process of home buying, which aids in removing the psychological stress from the process as well. But we'd love to have that conversation with you.
Absolutely. And Dr. Prasad, would welcome you back, because I think you've immediately and instantly become the psychologist for organizational change and behavior. I think that the way we've all reacted to you is a clear testament to both the need and your skill. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to our audience. We've gotten some comments that they found this very helpful. And for me, at USIBC, what I aim to do is not to do, as they call in India, a big wedding. I want to do the rehearsal dinner where everybody gets to know each other and everybody gets to understand the concept. So I'm really thankful to everyone who stayed and thankful to all of you who gave your time. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Nilima.
Good rest of the week.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Abhishek. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.